الحضور الكريم، السيدات والسادة، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، وأسعد الله مساءكم بكل خير. أهلاً وسهلاً بكم في إكسبو 2020 دبي، وبالتحديد في جناح ألمانيا ملتقى ألمانيا. يسعدنا اليوم إطلاق مشروع خاص ببرنامج سوا علم المتاحف. علم المتاحف، وهي مبادرة مشتركة بين هيئة الشارقة للمتاحف وبالتعاون مع متاحف برلين الوطنية ومؤسسة التراث البروسي ومعهد غوتا منطقة الخليج وجامعة العلوم التطبيقية في برلين، الذي تم إطلاقه في عام 2015، والذي يستهدف طلاب دراسات المتحفية والمتخصصين في المتاحف في المرحلة المبكرة من حياتهم المهنية في المنطقة العربية وألمانيا. يشرفني بشكل خاص أن أكون هنا اليوم لأقدم لكم هذا المشروع الفريد مع زملائي. اسمي علياء برحيمة، مدير إدارة تطوير المتاحف والتصميم بهيئة الشارقة للمتاحف، وأحد المحاضرين في برنامج سوا علم المتاحف منذ بداية إنشائه قبل 7 سنوات. اليوم ومن خلال هذه الجلسة الحوارية نعلن إطلاق العدد الأول من معجم المصطلحات المتحفية في عالمنا اليوم، تحت عنوان المصطلحات المتحفية تلاقي الكلمات، من خلال الصفحة الإلكترونية للمصطلحات متعددة الثقافات. أرغب بالترحيب بغوندولا أفينيريوس، المدير التنظيمي لبرنامج سوا منذ عام 2015، للانضمام إلي على المنصة للبدء بالحلقة النقاشية. Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We are pleased to welcome you here at Expo 2020 Dubai and to be particular in the German Pavilion, Campus Germany. Today, we are marking the launch of a unique project by Sawa Museum Studies Program, a joint initiative with Sharjah Museums Authority, Tlaque Museum zu Berlin, and the Goethe Institute Gulf Region, together with the University of Applied Sciences Berlin, HTW, that launched in 2015 and is aimed at students of museum studies and museum professionals in the early stage of their career from the Arab region and Germany. I'm particularly honored to be here today to introduce you to this unique project with my colleagues. My name is Alia Burhima. I'm Museums Development Manager at SMA and one of the lecturers at SAWA Museum Studies Program. I have been involved in SAWA since its inception 7 years ago. Today, at this panel discussion, we are marking the launch of publishing the first issue of a multicultural terminology terms in today's world, under the title, A Museum Glossary, An Encounter of Words, presenting a multicultural terminology webpage. I would like to welcome Gondola Avenerios, Organizational Manager at SAWA Museum Studies Program since 2015, to join me on stage to begin the discussion.
Thank you, Alia. Do you want to join me, Steve? Now it's my turn to introduce everyone in German. Geschätzte Gäste, meine Damen und Herren, alle SAWA-Kollegen, die anwesend sind, alle Sharjah Museum Authority Mitglieder, die hier sind. Wir freuen uns sehr, dass Sie alle hier auf der Expo 2020 in Dubai und insbesondere im deutschen Pavillon mit uns sein können. Wir geben heute den Startschuss für ein einzigartiges Projekt der Sawa Museum Studies Program, einer gemeinsamen Initiative der Sharjah Museum Authority, den staatlichen Museen zu Berlin und dem Goethe-Institut sowie der Hochschule für Technik und Wirtschaft Berlin und mit besonderer Förderung des Auswärtigen Amtes. Das Sawa Museum Programm wurde 2015 ins Leben gerufen und richtet sich an Studierende der Museumswissenschaften und Museumsfachleute aus dem arabischen Raum und Deutschland, die sich in der Anfangsphase ihrer Karriere befinden. Und es ist mir eine besondere Ehre, heute mit Ihnen gemeinsam und mit den Kolleginnen des SAWA-Programms das Glossary-Projekt vorzustellen. Die ersten Begriffe sind jetzt schon online und unter dem Titel Das Museumsglossar, eine Begegnung von Worten oder eine Wortbegegnung, stellen wir hier und heute die Arbeit an dieser Webseite vor. Aber bevor wir loslegen, werden wir erstmal ein kleines Video zeigen. So before we actually start, we will show a video of what SAWA is. And I think I can do it with this one, yeah? Click, thanks one. Yeah, okay. So we step aside.
I'm very excited about the publication since the content form at the time and it is now different from what we expected it to be at the beginning.
Different people were attending, and therefore we had way more diverse dialogue, and even the outcome shows this diversity.
And what's really interesting about this is the act of translation, how you take a concept from one language and translate it to another. What are the kind of underlying significance and meaning of what that museological term actually is.
أما بالنسبة للحضور الافتراضي لبرنامج سواء مكن العديد من المشاركة لأنه سمح لنا الحضور من المنزل أو حتى في ساعات العمل وعرفنا على برامج إلكترونية متخصصة في المجال فعلا كانت تجربة ملهمة.
So, I welcomed you in German, but now I will continue in English, as this is also the language in which we communicate in SAWA, lecturers as well as participants. And the reason for this being that by using English, we open up the program to those who do not speak Arabic or German, or both respectively. And by using the English language, we also often have to search for words that support the meaning we wish to express, as most of us do not communicate in their first language. From the beginning of SAWA in 2015, we were very much aware of this challenge, and we realized very quickly that many words are not easily translatable from Arabic to German or to English or vice versa. You may, for example, just look at the word museum. It is not on here, but it's of course always in our minds. And the word museum, which in its origin stems from the Greek word museon, meaning holy place of the muses, the goddesses of the arts. So you may ask, is a temple for the goddesses of the arts an appropriate term that speaks for the role of museums today? Well, or you compare it with the Arabic word for museum, which is often translated to bait or dar, house or home, as well as markez, center, or most often mataf, from the word tofa, meaning artifact or masterpiece. So without being too etymological here, it's always a question, different stems of words having different concepts and different meanings for what the place is supposed to be. Is it more a community place where people meet and possibly converse about past and present, or is it primarily a house or a building for storage and upkeep of objects and heritage? And these are central questions for the role museums as an institution can play in our societies today. And it applies to Europe as well as to the Middle East, Northern Africa region, which is called MENA, and of course, it applies to museums all over the world. So before we come to the glossary, which you can already see behind me, let me say a few words about Sawa. You've seen images just now of the past Sawas. The name Sawa, meaning together or joined in English, or zusammen, gemeinsam in German, was chosen specifically to reflect the central vision of this program, as opposed to the usual capacity building programs where people are trained by experts in one direction. We decided to base the program on equal knowledge exchange and on dialogue. And in Sawa, the inputs and impulses are given by teams of European Arabic origin to a group consisting of equal number of German European participants and participants coming from Arabic-speaking countries. And these impulses given by the facilitators serve as a starting point to ask questions and to get to know each other's practices in the museums locally. So there is a strong focus on working together practically and learning from each other and with each other, and this applies to the participants as well as the facilitators, who are at the same time participants themselves. So in Sawa, we were always collecting words and their meanings, trying to find out what the words that we use, or what are the words that we use most frequently, and what they mean to different people in different contexts and different practices. And hopefully, by doing so, we identify words that have most common denominators and are useful for working with, which, by the way, at the moment is happening in the International Council for Museums Worldwide to come to a more relevant definition for what a museum is. And then during the pandemic, when the regular Sawa couldn't take place, we created a Sawa virtual series and asked all 80 participants from the past years to join us for online seminars to reflect on the terms we had already collected. And in February 2021, we started with a group of 20 alumni online, and groups were formed, and each group could choose a term that was relevant to them, and each group chose a very, very different approach to document their exchange. The outcome, as you can see when you go to the website, is not a normative glossary, but rather a living archive of experiences, practices, and discussions. And we now have on the website, for example, a poem, a Miro board conversation, a letter exchange, as well as essays and extensive documentation of dialogues. And when the pandemic slowed down, we were able to meet again in Sharjah last October. And in addition to the mentioned outcomes, we created small videos for each term that was discussed. To reflect on the process and also on the outcomes, I would like to now welcome colleagues to the stage, virtually and physically. And I don't know whether we can already bring in Steffen, who is in Germany. He's there. Oh, Steffen is there. He's behind me. And I will introduce Steffen. So Steffen Backhaus, who studied museology at the HTW, one of our partners in Berlin, was a participant in Sawa 2018 and 19, and is currently a research assistant with the Institute for Museum Research, Institut für Museumsforschung in Berlin. And I also would like to welcome Khawla Alawadi to the stage. You can come and take the seat. This will be mine. Please take your microphone. Okay. So Khawla is the head of the museum's performance division at Sharjah Museums Authority, and she was a participant in 2019-20 and worked in a group on curation. I forgot to mention, but you see that, of course, that Stefan worked with a group on narrative. And I would also like to welcome now John Paul Sumner to the stage. John Paul is a HTV associate and SAWA lecturer almost from the beginning, who had worked on connecting and overarching perspectives within the glossary together with his colleague Alia, who you just saw when she made the official welcome. And last but not least, I would like to welcome Alia Al-Mulla. She's... Alia, can you sit here? I was told it's better. Yeah, shall we? Yep. Yeah, you sit here. It's fine. And I would welcome Alia. And Alia is, of course, the curator at the Sharjah Art Museum within the Sharjah Museums Authority. And she's also a lecturer with SAWA together with our colleague David Francis, who is in the audience. So I move over here. So I will start with Stefan. And Stefan, maybe we start by asking you, what were your motives to come back to SAWA and start with us the glossary?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation, and what a wonderful video you have created. It was quite a long journey for all of you, I guess. Well, SAWA, for my motivation to join the project again was SAWA had a very big impact on me at that time, both personally and professionally. And I was just very happy to get the opportunity to meet some of the people again and join this glossary project. And for me, SAWA is not just an intercultural exchange program, because we often use the term intercultural competences or things like that to refer to a skill or something that you train to do better in your work or something. But I see SAWA more as just an opportunity to meet like-minded people and from different countries. And in our case, that means that just talking about nerdy museum topics, like the word narrative in all of its facets for the museum, for several hours without getting bored. And I really liked having that SAWA feeling again.
So when you first heard we wanted to do a glossary, what were your thoughts on a glossary for SAWA?
I think it was quite an
big task to take on. Yeah.
Big task to take on. We stumbled upon these different meanings of words over the several SAWA sessions, I guess. And I'm quite sure that with our entry, we did not create the state of the art on the word narrative for the next years, but nevertheless, I think we had some interesting ideas we came up with along with the way. And as we came from very different fields within the museum world, we had, we had a very relaxed and open talk. And even though our conversation was characterized by mutual understanding, we quickly realized that we sometimes had very different approaches to the topics. And I think it's interesting to see that the glossary does not try to give that universal definition, but allows these different perspectives to stand side by side with each other.
And I think we haven't mentioned the colleagues you worked with in your group yet.
Sure.
Would you like to say a few words about the two people who worked with you?
Yes, I worked together with Mamdouh Fouk. He's a curator at the Yasser Arafat Museum in Ramallah, and Friederike Eden, who is a photography historian and works at the Alfred Erhard Stiftung, a small gallery in Berlin Mitte. That was the one team I was on. Yeah.
So let me ask you just a few things about the writing process. Because as I said, many, many different outcomes are now on the webpage. What made you come up with a long text in the form of a dialogue?
So we started by just write down 100 words, each for themselves, on the topic of narrative in the museum context. And then we sent it to each other, and then we met digitally first and just asked each other a lot of questions. And we just talked and shared our perspectives on the word. And I think the meeting lasted like 4 or 5 hours or something, and we recorded the audio. And later we used the software to make a transcription of that. And the result was quite a number of pages actually. And we tried to, after that we met and on a regular basis, I guess like twice a month or something. And we edited together, we compiled it to one document, and we very quickly decided not to write a single text together, but to keep this dialogical character. So we have our names and then can identify who said what. And after that, when we were mainly okay with our text, there were 2 proofreading sessions with where some of the lecturers commented on our text, and we decided for ourselves where we would go with the comments and where not. But actually, the comments were very, very helpful and motivating, and they did not intervene or something, but the lecturers rather encouraged us to explore some questions further, and it was very, very nice, this process. And I would like to thank again the lecturers who did this great work with us, because it was a lot of text we compiled together.
Thank you, Steffen. I hope you stay with us for a while for the discussion, but maybe the audience would like to ask questions about the process. I would like to now hand it over to Khawla Al-Awadi, who is another participant that worked on curation. And I think I'll have to switch the video now, just a second, because then I hope Steffen stays with us. And yeah, and we have an idea of what your outcome was. And I take this little device with me. And the question to you would be the same. You've been a participant before. What made you join the program again for this exceptional project?
I guess, okay, yeah. When I first saw the announcement for the SAWA Glossary project, I had just come out of the SAWA actual experience, because I was a participant in the years 2019 and 2020. So my memory of the program was very, very fresh still, and it was a very positive one. I remember how much I enjoyed the training program and how much I learned from it, and how much it added to me as a person and a professional too. So, and also because the highlight that was in the announcement was that the program would discuss and explore different terms that are related to the museum's context. And I thought this would add to my career as well as an employee at Sharjah Museums Authority. So I was very much interested in that, and I went for it. Yeah.
So we see behind us now the huge image of your colleagues, because that represents what is also on the website. You not only worked in a mirror board, you documented your process in the mirror board, and you created a video that explains us your process. So what was the reason for your choice to use that media?
When we were given the task to document or produce something that has to do with the term that we selected, which was curation. So I selected curation and another term also, but I'm going to talk about curation today. So I and 3 more female museum practitioners also selected the same term. So what happened was the process itself was we were formed in this group, in this mixed and nice group of 4 museum practitioners, 2 from Germany, Anna Kalorans and Josephine, and then 1 museum practitioner from Palestine, and that is Samar Kurash, and myself from the UAE. So the process in the beginning was we were formed as a team, and we started having our small meetings online because I hadn't met these ladies before. It was the first time for me to meet them. So we started meeting online in our small group, and we started having these discussions about the term. So why did we select this term? And what is our understanding of the term as a term and also as a practice? So we started sharing our knowledge, our experience. So how it started is basically lots of discussions via Zoom, and they were all recorded and documented and everything. And then we thought we need to put this somewhere. And because it was an open format that we were, so we didn't have to stick by a specific format to produce our project, the outcome of our project. We thought, and I, for one, was introduced to Miro board for the first time through Sawa, along with other platforms as well. So we thought we had just used the Miro board for an exercise that we were given as participants, which was to curate an exhibition. So we went on there and we thought we'd document everything that we have on the Miro board because I think it serves as a great visual mind map, and it's very much, it's very helpful, especially when you're working in a big group and when this group is not physically with you in the same space. So we were able to go back to the Miro board at any time and just put our notes, put our comments, links, pictures and videos and everything. So it served as a great tool for documenting the entire process. And then by the time we were done, we thought it looks actually great. So let's just use it as it is.
So could you just maybe give us one highlight what the document, what the Miro board documents? One aspect that you discussed in terms of curation.
Okay, so we discussed different things. So on the Miro board, and there's a presentation, like you mentioned, a 10 minutes long video recorded, which explains the Miro board. So I encourage people to look at it before viewing the Miro board. What we have on the Miro board is basically our entire work process. So we have something about us, the 4 group members, as museum practitioners and also as individuals. So there's a lot of personal stories there as well and personal photos. So you get to know something about the team members, but also there is, of course, some links to research which we did as a group. Our reflection and what we thought about these articles or case studies or books that we saw. There's also we look at the term curation from the Arabic, English, and German dictionaries. And all of that is documented on the Miro board, along with our practical experience from wherever it is that we are. So from the UAE, Sharjah specifically, and Palestine and Berlin. So all of that is documented on the board.
Thank you. So Jean-Paul, it's now your turn. You worked together with Aliyah on several terms. So, yeah, why was there a requirement for a glossary in the first place?
Yes, well, that's a good question.
I think you have to, oh, is it? Yeah.
Hello? No, hello. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Why was there a requirement for a glossary? Yeah. After many years of working in museums, I've been in real-life situations where conversations have been happening between people, where words have been used, where museological terms are used, and maybe one party actually has got a completely different concept and idea in their head from the other person who's talking. And of course, nobody's aware that when one person means hands-on or participation or dialogue, they've got one idea in their head, whereas the other person might have a different idea. And so I could see real-life real requirement for some kind of, okay, let's clarify what these words could actually mean. And I think what's absolutely unique about SAWA is it's, you know, you can go online and you can type these words into a search engine and you will get definitions of these words. But these definitions that you see actually probably come from quite a narrow perspective and tend to often say sort of the same things, which actually might not be completely suitable for an international museum service. And so what's unique about SAWA is it's actually people coming together and discussing what these words may or may not mean, and actually coming to our own definition. So what's important is that this is not, we've not sought the correct answer from what the internet tells us or what other people tell us. These are our definitions that we have come to together as a group to define what these phrases and these words mean. And I think that's what gives them real power and real depth.
So who would you say would be the audience to benefit from the glossary?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think what's been created here is a real tool that a real resource that people who work in museums in particular can go to and can use and refer to. I think and also it empowers people who are working in museums, because the definitions of these words that are used quite regularly could be imposed upon some people, and it might not be really what they're thinking or really how they want to progress. And I hope that the SAWA glossary can be used as a helpful support for people who can actually come back and say, well, this is kind of what I'm thinking about. This articulates what's maybe going on in my mind, and can be used in that way, or alternatively to inspire people and to think, yeah, maybe this is how my museum will define these words. So as a real tool for people, I think it's quite a powerful thing.
So maybe one last question referring to how we work in SAWA. I said in my introduction that sometimes lecturers also become participants. How would you describe your experience on the glossary?
Well, I mean, I would describe it as a journey that I went on with my colleagues. I was working with 3 other participants. Huda, Frederica, and Razanin were working together on the word interpretation. And of course, it's a word that is used a lot in museums and has many different meanings. We actually came to our own definition. I actually came to my own personal definition of what that word can mean. Ironically, for a glossary, I found it difficult to express it in words, so I used an animation to try and talk about how interpretation can modify a museum, and how a museum could, maybe an institution could interpret itself and actually modify the way that it presents itself to the world. So, so SAWA's not a regular glossary. There's all sorts of different resources, websites, poetry, letters to one another, animations, movies, all sorts of things on the SAWA glossary that actually help to communicate these concepts to everybody.
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul. And now, Ali Al-Mulla, your thoughts on taking part in the glossary as a facilitator?
As a facilitator, it was a learning process for us as well, with the participants and discovering these new meanings for the glossary terms that were chosen. Just going back a bit, these glossary terms that you see on the screen, I mean, before as the lecturers and even Gondola, how we chose these, I mean, we had a long list of glossary terms in the beginning. So what we did was there were several meetings where the lecturers, all of us, we did kind of like a voting system, and we picked 3 of our, not favorite, but the terms we thought were the most useful or important enough to really go into as a project. So we chose the terms. So me, along with my colleague David Francis, we present the module on curatorial strategies. We chose the terms curation, narrative, and dialogue. So for us, these were three very important terms that are always used in the module every year. Again, going back to the glossary terms themselves, so every year in the SAWA program, these terms are always widely used in all of the 4 modules. So it only made sense that we highlight and choose these certain terms and delve deeper and have new meanings and go deeper into the layers of what they mean to the participants, but in a more personal, emotional perspective. These are some of the thoughts and ideas, but then as we went along with the process, I mean, with 2020 and when the pandemic happened, everything went digital, and how this whole project came to be, everything was digital, and it only made sense that we go back to the alumni and seek their support as well in this project for us. So the glossary terms, again, as John Paul had earlier said, it's not like properly, I mean, it's not a dictionary. Neither is it like an academic research where you would go and find the exact meaning for the term. It's mostly reflections from the participants, how they feel towards these certain terms. So, I mean, we don't have enough time right now, but some of the outcomes that we had were really interesting and quite amazing to see. So, for example, for one of the terms, emotion, the participants had presented a poem, like we all know. We saw the Miro board that Khawla and her group had done. We had a huge piece on narrative, which Stefan had done. So it was interesting to see how each of these participants had understood these glossary terms from their own personal background, educational background, as well as emotional experiences they have gone through.
Thank you. And just to explain, we are showing behind us a few images of the process and the discussions, and of course some new images of the current SAWA and some older images that give you an idea of how we work in SAWA. So maybe you would like to say something also about what makes SAWA for you such a special program?
Definitely. So I'm a lecturer with the program since 6 years, or since when it had first started. It's a very hands-on program for the participants as well as the lecturers. I mean, the good thing about it is that we don't have these barriers between the lecturer or the participant. There are no constraints. We all work together. We all work as a group. Even for a lot of these group activities and tasks, you would see the lecturers being part of with the participants, and they would be doing the tasks along with them. So that's a really nice thing. Plus, because it's like a joint thing, so you have half of the participants from Berlin and the other half is from the MENA region. So that as well is very interesting, especially for the Berlin participants, because for most of them, this is the first time for most that they would be visiting this region or Sharjah, somewhere in the Arab world. This would be the first time that they are having a one-to-one conversation with somebody from this part of the world. That itself is an experience. I mean, outside the modules and the structure and all the things that we teach them, the real magic happens when these participants talk to each other, whether it's during the breaks or during the group works. They have these personal conversations about experiences, museums, everything in general. So that's the whole spirit of SAWA and what carries it forward.
Thank you, Aliyah. I think this could be now the time to open our small presentation up for the public. And let's see if there are any questions. I was told that there's also the possibility that maybe if people are following the live stream, that there could also be questions, but I'm not quite sure. Ah, there's a question. Is there a mic going around? Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you for that really, really interesting presentation. It's a fascinating subject. We're from Louvre, Abu Dhabi. I'm joined by my colleagues, our senior editor, head of the research center, and I'm the head of publications. We also have a trilingual glossary that we've been developing since the museum opened over the past 5 years in English, Arabic, and French. So this is fascinating to us to think perhaps there's collaboration or crossover, at least some conversations to be had with what we've worked on and what you're doing. I think my first question is your glossary live and active? Can we see it? Can we go play with it and dig around and learn about your terminology?
When the acoustics are not that good, but I hope is it live? Okay.
Yeah, is it live?
With live, you mean can I participate as somebody who goes on the website?
Can we see the?
Yeah, sorry.
Can we see the glossary?
Okay, is that one better?
It's on the website. Is
Okay.
on. If that was the question. What you saw just before I showed the other pictures is the first page of it, and the URL is sawa.htw/berlin.de. So it's under the HTW, the University of Applied Science, and yeah, it's on.
Okay, fantastic. And then maybe.
And it will be continued. So as we are in the process, we are also thinking about using a contact window, for example, in the page. So there is a slight possibility that people can also comment on what other people wrote in there. As I said, it's a living archive, so it should be more about the practices and the way these words are used than about something that is written in stone, so to speak, forever. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's just what you said there at the end. What we're not trying to do is make a static one-off. This is the definition. We've said it, and then we can walk away. It's an organic thing that grows and may change and can be added to and may be edited. We want this glossary to reflect the realities of working today, when actually the meanings of words do and the practices do actually change. So yes, if we can involve other contributions and make networks and link up with other people to give inspiration, because I think the reality, what happens in reality is that people choose the definition that they want and that suits them. And so I think if there's definitions out there and we can actually articulate that so that people can then actually say, no, this is what I mean when I'm talking about this. And so it helps people to communicate with one another, and I think that's one of the aims that we're trying to get to. And it's not that it's an absolute definition, but it's a proposal and also a stimulation to help people to think about these things. But we're not trying to define the words.
Alia, Raula, would you like to answer or say something about the question of the living archive, or how it can be used?
I'd just like to add to what John Paul has said. It's a very organic method of how we did it. So again, it's not a dictionary. It's not like an academic research where you would quote something from. It's more like how you feel. And especially, nowadays with so much that's happening in the world, it's good for people to reflect upon these words or find the Sawa glossary and read the terms from an emotional point of view and what it really means, how people feel when they read the word dialogue or narrative. It does not necessarily have to be a very structured, literal meaning, but it could be something how you feel towards that word. And different people from different backgrounds can identify it, because we kind of surpassed that literal technical meaning of it and reached out at another layer.
Yes.
Hello. Do you hear me? Okay, so thank you for the amazing presentation. We really enjoyed it, and I'm talking about all of SOA members, of course. The question is, it is for the alumni, actually. So, as alumni, and you're working, and you worked actually on the glossary project, and this is the first version of the glossary project. So what are the main challenges that faced you during the process, and how long did it take, I mean, for all of you? Thank you.
Thank you. So it's about the main challenges, yeah.
I guess the main, I think for my experience, because I worked on two terms, dialogue and curation, I don't think we faced, honestly, any like major issues or challenges or anything. Because we had a good sense of commitment from everyone working on the team. So we were all there all the time, and we would meet whenever, because we would have like WhatsApp groups where we can agree on timings to meet and everything. And it wasn't challenging or anything because, for example, I hadn't seen these people before. No, I think it went smoothly. Maybe the only challenge was when we couldn't agree on meeting timings, for example, because of the different, time changes in different countries and in different places, and the different working hours and working days as well, with the weekends and everything. But I don't think it was a major challenge, because even when one person was unable to make it, the other group members would be there, and we would brief one another all the time through WhatsApp or email. Yeah, and that was it. And we would respect everyone's time and everyone's responsibility, and I think it was okay. But for the second part of your question, in terms of how long did it take, we started working, I think within 4 months, around 4 months, but it didn't take us the entire time to work, so it wasn't like every day, you know. But yeah, it was a great experience, it was, and there weren't any major challenges, to be honest, from my side. Yeah. I hope this answers your question.
So in terms of challenges, I think the biggest challenges is making time for working in exchange, working in dialogue, finding the right medium. Would you want to write a text, or would you want to do a video, for example? I think that those were the biggest challenges, yeah. But what helped, of course, was that we were working with SAWA alumni. So even though, as Khawla just said, they didn't know each other because they came from different years, they were working in the same spirit, so to speak. That's how I would describe it, yeah. Yes, please.
Hello, yeah, hi. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question in terms of who has access to the glossary and who it is made visible to. So is it only for people working in a museum or are associated to a museum, or should it also be made visible to the visitors of a museum, so that they could see how the curator maybe reflects upon these words? And if so, how could it be made visible in a museum? Thank you.
Would you like to answer, Ali?
Sure. I mean, I can start. So yeah, it is visible for all. There is a link for it. I mean, you will see it at the end of the presentation. It's visible for all, and I feel it's an ongoing project that will be developed further. But yeah, it's for everyone.
And I think that the idea, maybe the glossary itself might not be completely apparent when you walk into a museum, but I think that we hope that over time, as museums develop, as they develop new methodologies, new philosophies, new ways of thinking, that certainly the concepts and the spirit of the glossary will become apparent in museums, or more I mean, they already are in some cases, and that will grow as well, and that it will be an inspiration for museologists, curators, museum people, and that these kind of ideas will be further adopted in museums. And now that it's online, that could happen anywhere.
Does that answer your question? But I heard a second part, whether curators should, or did I just hear that? I mean, it's an interesting question how, for example, the SAWA participants bring the discussions back to their museums, because they're all working in the early stages of their career, and we are following that closely in an alumni circle, and some people are constantly struggling, of course, with how maybe revolutionary or different the ideas are in SAWA, and how to really implement them in a huge museum in which they return to. So this is an open question, and maybe the glossary page can support that, so that they can say, see, take a look, those are the discussions that we had. So the question of public is, of course, always there. Anything else? Any other questions?
Hi, thank you for your presentation today. You have early career practitioners in this program, and currently ICOM is debating what the definition of museum should be. Did the participants on this program, through going through this exercise, take time to reflect on the debate about what a museum should be, and look into how that can be such a tricky thing to define, particularly if you are approaching the term museum from a cross-border or a cross-cultural perspective?
It's difficult to hear the question, but was the question, do participants actually engage in how to define a museum and what a museum is? Was that the question?
Is this working? Okay. Because they're early career practitioners, as they're sitting down to discuss these terms that are used in museums and galleries. When they came around to the end of the exercise, or throughout the exercise, did they take time? Was there debate? Was there any processing around the idea of why it's so tricky to define, as ICOM is trying to define, what a museum is? Did the participants in the program have any thoughts or reflections on how that definition should be formed moving forward, based particularly on the fact that this is a cross-border, cross-cultural initiative that looks into how people define these ideas?
I can add a bit, and then I feel Danielle, she's one of the lecturers with us in the group, she would be the best person to answer this question. But yeah, I mean, even now, so currently we are in the new session of the SAWA program. So this is one of the first questions that was opened up to the participants. What is a museum? How do you define a museum? What is a collection? How do you place collections in a museum? So I don't know if I can pass the mic on to Danielle, and she would add a bit more to this.
I'll just quickly go. No, I'm just sit here on the edge, that's fine. Hi, I'm Danielle, and I'm chair of COMCOL, which is ICOM's Committee for Collecting. Yes, indeed, we have been discussing through SAWA the concept and ideas, what is a museum, especially in the last years running up to Kyoto. And then after Kyoto, what happened in Kyoto, what were we talking about? And now with the new SAWA, we started to look at the 5 new proposals. And I think what you see within SAWA in the discussions is exemplary of what is happening worldwide in the discussions. There are many nuances, and how do you come together to agreements on that? If you have to define one definition, that we will work with worldwide. It's a big challenge, and it's now the current working group within ICOM has been working for 3 years on a participatory way, trying to engage as many members as possible to have these discussions. And it's really nice within our groups to do the same and to see how we can come up and maybe what we think, at least that's what I'm going to do, what we think and what we discuss, to bring that also back to ICOM and say, so we have in a mini session discussed the following, and these are the outcomes, and what can we do with that? Because this is the next generation. And most of the people that within ICOM are discussing it, and I hope I'm not tripping on any toes here, but it's the older generation that are making and voting the decisions. But they are having to give shape to what the museums are for the future. So therefore it is important to keep and engage them with these discussions constantly. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Danielle. So, are there any more questions? I know that there are also a lot of participants from our current SAWA in the audience. Maybe one of you would like to elaborate on how we use the glossary, or your young experience, your experience that you've done in the past few days with us in the current SAWA on the glossary. Is there anybody courageous enough? Yeah, Rafal from Baghdad. So we pass the mic to Rafal.
Hello again. I don't know whether I'm courageous enough or not, actually, because regarding the glossary project that we worked on, I didn't think at first that it is a project, actually. It was like it started as a task, a mini task within the group, and each one of us had to choose one word that reflects on and write for 5 sentences or something like that. And the amount of words and terms were huge. Actually, it's a shame that we don't have a picture of that. I mean, the new wall that was full of words and terms that were really effective. I mean, according to them, to the other members of SAWA. So words like emotions, words like, I don't know, maybe history, collection, many words occurred, and many words needed to be translated or interpreted to another language, from German or Arabic or English. So we had to, I don't know how, clarify things to other participants. So sometimes we need not only to find just one definition of a word. No, we have to explain and elaborate to just describe the term that we were really trying to give an idea about. So it was really exciting experience, and the thing is that all of us were so attached and so interactive regarding it, and we all felt connected and somehow with personal experiences, with things that we faced in our societies and in other situations. So I think this would be as Daniel said, it's really, this is the future. I think we will be able to make this glossary project a reference and a resource for many scholarships and many students or freshmen, just like we are right now at the beginning of their career. I think it will be like really a great archive, and it's really important to document all of these details and make them public, just like you did, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael. Yes, I think I'd just like to add that it's interesting also for us, the group that more or less stays the same, that the words are changing. Yeah, there's somebody else? Yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much. As my colleague mentioned, so we are working on a similar project in Louvre, Abu Dhabi, but in French, Arabic, and English, actually. I don't know what I'm hearing myself. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah. So one of the challenges we are facing is actually in the Arabic part, because we all know that terminology is pretty much established in other languages, but we have a gap in Arabic. So our focus is actually more on Arabic than other languages right now. So may I ask what approach you used in the Arabic terminology, and also, do you think that definitions are enough to make people understand the meaning of a term in a glossary or terminology?
I can answer that partly, and then someone can continue. So in terms of definitions, one definition, yes, it's not enough, especially, I mean, these are really heavy, big terms. And then, yeah, again, when it comes to Arabic, because museums and this whole field is relatively new in this part of the world, so there are so many terms, terminologies, whether in the art field or archaeology, anywhere else, they do not have a literal meaning in Arabic. We faced that a lot, actually, while we were working on this project. So again, we did kind of like a voting system. So for example, for the word dialogue, we had 3 or 4 different Arabic terms for it. And between ourselves, we kind of decided, okay, this one fits, or kind of is more what dialogue would mean. And then, so like I was saying earlier, so my colleague David Francis and myself, we do the curation module. So the word curator itself does not have an Arabic equivalent to it. So where I work in the Sharjah Museums Authority, curator is known as متحف. But then in other institutions, a curator is known as qayyim. So again, I mean, these are 2 completely different meanings, but then in English or French, German, it has a single word. Exactly. So it's like an ongoing, evolving research, and we're kind of trying to facilitate this process.
Yeah, there is actually, little consensus in Arabic than in other languages on the meaning of some terms, actually. May I know whether whether you used a software to manage terminology, right, or when you published the glossary to the internet, is there a software that you have used in particular to manage the terminology?
Andula can answer this one.
Maybe let me answer this in a different way. We don't use a software. We are very much a dialogical format. We work in a workshop kind of way. So the living dialogue, be it virtual or be it in presence, is very much part of SAWA. And we're not opting for the exact translation. What we are doing is we're working via the concepts. So when you go to our website, you will see that our original aim to make it really trilingual, one should say, so German, Arabic, and English, was only partly taken up. For example, diversity, discussed that in a format where 2 people discussed difficulties of translation. We are still willing to do the full translation in the future, but we realized, much like you, that this is something that leads to a different direction. So what we are really trying to do is working via what does it mean for your practice, because in the end, when we are in Sawa, there's no going around the fact that we talk in English. It's still there, and it was all the time there in the discussions. People were bringing in the German words, were bringing the roots of the German word, were bringing in the difficulty of using English international terms, and also the challenges that we always presume we know what the English term means, but it actually doesn't mean what we mean in the local context. So when we started out with Sawa, we called it appropriate museology, simply because we wanted to be appropriate in the local context and then learn from the different practices in Sharjah or in Berlin and see what we can learn from each other.
Thank you. My last question is, does the glossary allow for, engaging other, people, or getting feedback, receiving feedback, or, comments through the website?
At the moment, not through the website, but as I said, we are working on this. It's very much a work in process. We are currently using the website for the current Sawa that's on. So we are discussing what is on the website. We are discussing whether the words are relevant still, or whether the current year of Sawa, we have at the moment 17 participants that are here in Sharjah that will continue working over the year, and in September they come to Berlin. And over the whole year of 2022, they will work on their terms and their definitions. And again, as we are living archives, they have all the possibilities to do a video, write an essay, or conduct a dialogue and document that.
If I can just add to that, we've had the discussion about the website, and should we encourage people to online contribute, online modify, online send requests, etc., and make comments. And the thing is, it's very easy to do. All you have to do is turn on a button on the website, and then people can send in their messages and send in their comments, etc. But the issue that we have is, what do we do with that? How do we, people can send in comments, but it's quite another job to have behind the scenes set up to deal with those comments, and how to integrate them, and how to actually treat them, those comments, with respect, and that we can actually, that they make use of them. So it's been a conscious decision not to turn on that button, because we're just not in a position to be able to process them effectively.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alia, would you? No. Okay. Yeah. So if there are, there is a question.
Hello. I want to say first, thank you for everything. And now my question is this glossary will be, for example, adopted by ACOM? So it will be used internationally, or it will be just for the museums of Berlin and museums in Emirates? So it will be like adopted from ACOM, and so it will be like a common glossary for the whole people working in the museum fields. For example, if someone from India is working in museums, so he will use the same terms and the same definitions that you use in Germany or in Syria or in...
Does anybody here want to?
At the moment, the link or the website is open for all. I guess seeing from the responses today, and even with the new participants, I feel we will be continuing with this and evolving and adding more terms to it. But yeah, at the moment, you'll see the link at the end of the presentation, so anyone can access it.
No, I meant that it would be like used officially from all the museums in the world, for example.
It depends. So like I was mentioning earlier during my session with Gondola, it's not really like like an academic definition of these terms. Neither is it like a dictionary or something that you would quote or refer to, but yes, as an experience, or it's more like, yeah, a shared experience of having some kind of connection to these words. So, I mean, any museum professional, even if you're not a museum professional, you can access this web page and go through these terms. I feel, yeah, I mean, it does what it does, but again, I don't know how official it will be. I think that's a question we would address in the future, maybe, not right now.
Okay, since Stefan is back on, I think you were following our discussions, probably, yeah. Is there anything you would like to comment on? For example, you are working in the context of the stately Prussian museums. Can you imagine using the glossary?
I mean, it would be nice if this glossary would grow and would be used globally in the end. I mean, it could be a nice idea to have this SAVA program going globally someday. But for me personally, at the moment, I would say that is a wish at the moment. But maybe when the glossary grows and glossary entries are more defined every year or something, it would be great.
Thank you. That's of course our intention, and so it's a nice word to conclude with. And you also mentioned that the SAWA program could grow. That is also the case, as we are very, very happy that we received funding from the Foreign Ministry of Germany in their museum agency construct, which they created together with a museum lab, another program that is funded. And of course, we thank the Sharjah Museum Authority as a great partner in the program. And there have been many, many talks, for example, to extend SAWA to Latin American countries and other countries and other regions of the world, but that is at the moment the future. So we are thanking, of course, the German Pavilion for hosting us here. And I would like to conclude now with a small glimpse of the glossary and share with you a video on the term diversity, which was created by participants last October in Sharjah. And in German, vielen Dank an alle, die heute da gewesen sind, online oder hier Präsenz. Und my colleague Alia, meine Kollegin Alia Burheimer, will say a few words later after the video. So thank you very much, everyone that was here and participated with questions, and also everyone here on the podium. Thank you very much.
أعزائنا الحضور، نصل الآن لختام برنامجنا لهذا اليوم، ونشكركم مرة أخرى على حضوركم، وندعوكم لزيارة الموقع الإلكتروني على الشاشة أمامكم، آملين أن نلقاكم مجدداً في الفعاليات والمعارض المستقبلية التي تنظمها هيئة الشارقة للمتاحف. شكراً لكم جميعاً، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Esteemed guests, as we now conclude our panel discussion for the evening, we would like to welcome you to visit the website through the QR code on the screen. We would like to thank you for being here, whether in person or virtually, and we hope to see you soon in future events and exhibitions organized by Sharjah Museums Authority. I would like to ask lecturers to join us on stage for a group photograph. Thank you and have a lovely evening.
Inside, the seasons fading